Hi, this is Cynthia McMullen with Alaska Institute of Oriental Medicine, Acupuncture, and Massage Therapy. And I'm here today with Dalshir Peiwalon, and we're going to talk about the I-Ching, some of the more esoteric aspects of the Taoist philosophy. So I'm going to start with a very basic understanding or history of the I-Ching and then kind of let you fill in any details or make any corrections. And I know that it started back many years ago. I don't know the exact time period, but there was one of the Chinese rulers was imprisoned for something, and he had visions of lines or of the trigrams while he was in his prison cell. He saw them on the wall, and I guess he drew those out of the void somehow, and they meant something. He understood them. He gave them a meaning, or he understood the meaning of them. I don't know what he asked in there to get that. But then it's fascinated people from the point that he put this information out. It fascinated other Chinese rulers. I know Carl Jung was fascinated and kind of brought it over to this country. And my understanding is it's basically a system that allows us to stop time and look at the present moment in relation to the influences of earth and heaven on the moment of humanity, or what's happening in our circumstances. Anything you want to fill in there?
I like your explanation of stopping the moment and drawing information from heaven and earth. When we talk about the I-Ching, that's pretty much where we have to go. The I-Ching is much older than the imprisoned emperor that you're mentioning, Shih. And it's not that these were images that just spontaneously came to him out of the universe. The I-Ching is based on what they call yin and yang. To symbolize yin and yang, they give yang a solid line and yin an empty line, or a line with emptiness in the middle, to emphasize thing and no thing, or something and nothing. Yang is, yin is not. So the basic philosophy of yin and yang precedes history. So they go back, I say historians go back to Shih, and they drive that back 50,000 years. But the principal concepts of the I-Ching were around probably 100,000 years before that. And how it came down is the wise ones of the time would say either something is or it is not. If it is not, it can't be is, and if it is, it can't be is not. So they use these as two defining natures or two defining phenomenons in the universe. Either something is or it is not.
Is that as in truth? It is either true or it is...
It will apply. It will apply to truth, but it's going to apply to every other phenomenon in the universe. I say every other phenomenon in the universe. Take the functioning of an organ. There's going to be two states of organ function, but it's going to be described in three ways. Either the organ is functioning appropriately, or the organ is functioning inappropriately. Those are the only two states that the organ can be in: appropriate function, inappropriate function, yang or yin. Now, to describe that state, we can say that the organ is either over-functioning, functioning properly, or under-functioning. Okay, and those are going to be the only three states that can exist within that. But what we notice is that either the organ is over-functioning or the organ is under-functioning. When yin and yang are in harmony, the organ is functioning appropriately. So that is going to be the case with any realm of knowledge. All realms of knowledge use the is not dichotomy as a ground for reasoning, as a ground for understanding, and then as a means of manipulating that understanding. So the idea of the I-Ching is older than recorded history. You go hunting for buffalo. Either the buffalo is here or the buffalo is not. If the buffalo is not here, then you have to go to where the buffalo is. And now this is this whole yin-yang, is not here, there, not there, here, not here. It's here, right? And the whole, what we call hunting and tracking patterns. So this idea of depicting the I-Ching in solid lines and broken lines is just one way of depiction. However, it becomes very useful because each is or is not is a moment in time. Either it is or it isn't. And so to describe successive moments in times, we would have different is and is not relationships. Well, that can go on infinitely. What the I-Ching designers have done is they took it to certain dimensional levels. So you have the first level of is not, and then the next level of is not, and then the next level of is not. And these are moments in space and time. And so you have 3 levels of is not, in moments of space and time. And then they repeated that. So now you have 6 levels of moments in space and times of is and is nots, which gives you 6 dimensions of consciousness that you can move through in space and time, which is heaven and between heaven and earth. Now, they saw that and said, wow, that's amazing, because meaning, interpretation, and context would always play a role in the interpretation of the is and is nots of a particular space and time. What the Emperor Shih did in his solitude, because he was imprisoned, right, was he took these packets of moments in space and time, which we call hexagrams now, which was 6 lines of the I-Ching, and interpreted them in a sophisticated way for his culture. Because he was a king, he had the knowledge of his culture and the science of his culture, and so he interpreted the 6 hexagrams in relationship to his cultural orientation. So he gave them perspective, but he gave them bias. So this hexagram would mean this, and this hexagram would mean that. And he did that for all 64 hexagrams. Now, his rationale for that was the relationship between yin and yang in the hexagrams. Because what they found was that the hexagrams had a consistent form with regards to yin and yang over time. So the I-Ching itself is a way of knowing, is a way of science, not a way of knowing, science. The I-Ching itself is a base scientific system. It's a way of knowing. Now, knowing what? Well, knowing whatever you want. But because you have to have a field to work within, you have to have a want, a desire. You have to have something that you want to know something about. And that is going to orient the rest of the dimensional forces of the I-Ching of the universe to that thing itself, and it will give you an output. And just like any system, the better the input, the better the output. So if you ask the question in a particular way, the I-Ching is going to give you a particular answer. If you ask the question in an unspecified way, the I-Ching is going to give you an unspecified answer. So if you go to the I-Ching and say, am I ugly? Right? The I-Ching will probably say, it's Tuesday. Of course you are. Or it might say something else. But it will say something in response or in harmony with the question that's asked. Now, why these systems do this like that? What systems? The systems based on empirical understanding of is and is not. Why it does that, we don't know. But what we do know is that it works in all systems of knowledge.
So you were saying it was cultural to the emperor who was in prison.
Yes.
He gave it cultural meaning.
Yes.
Yet it transcends that.
Right.
So I know.
It transcends that because all human beings are basically the same.
So we can take it out of that culture,
Right.
and it still applies to
Right.
the world,
Yes.
basically.
Pretty much like gunpowder.
And with the way that it draws or answers the questions, I don't know if it's, I'm calling it. But it seems like there's got to be some type of consciousness or intelligence to it.
No, it's an it.
Okay.
It's an it, yep.
So Carl Jung, I believe, was scared of it at first because it was so accurate and fascinated by it at the same time.
Well, this comes in because of how the wisdom traditions moves the cultivated mind forward. Because reality is going to respond to what it is that you think and what it is that you express. It is important that what you think and what you express is of a certain texture, is of a certain quality. So the first thing that you learn in the wisdom arts is how to have qualitative thoughts and what degrading thoughts actually are and what they do. And then you start to understand how to manifest qualitative thoughts on a continuous basis. And then you get into the habit and the conditioning of manifesting qualitative thought. And so now when you go to one of these systems that's going to take your thoughts and reflect them into multiple dimensions, you'll get a particular response that is harmonious. But if you don't have qualitative thoughts, I mean, you could ask the I-Ching, how can I destroy the world and create monsters? And the I-Ching's going to give you a response, right? But it's not the fault of the I-Ching, it's the fault of the person who's projecting the question. It's sort of like how we're looking at the computers right now, right? Well, you can go online and learn how to do anything. Right? You can learn how to build an automatic weapon and go out and kill dozens and dozens of people. Well, the information is there, but who would use it like that? That becomes the question. What type of a mind uses that information for that purpose? An uncultivated mind, an unqualitative mind, right? A mind that doesn't have the quality of thought to pose to it so that it gives it a qualitative response.
So what type of question would be a quality question? What can people use this for?
Right. What do people use it for? People use it for like their personal Ouija board, like their personal
horoscope, or
right, or what's the ball that gives you the answers?
The crystal ball.
Yeah, they use it. They use it for all types of things, and those who use it are very satisfied with the responses that they get. And invariably, the people that I've seen use it find that the responses that they get are very much in harmony with what it is that they were looking for, which is why it has survived over time the way it has and what it does. However, we must remember that the same pattern of understanding of is and is not is the same patterns that we use to design computer programmings, right? So what science is doing is taking the basic yin-yang pattern, is and is not, and in the I-Ching it goes out to 6 dimensions. In computers it goes out to 16 dimensions, right? Hexadecimal. So it goes out to 16 dimensions in the computer, which gives them basically a much more refined way of moving through cultural information, because the computer isn't going to give you anything other than cultural information.
Yeah, we wouldn't Google, should I go into this business venture? Is that the type of question that we would consult the I-Ching for?
It is the type of question we would consult the I-Ching for. It's also the type of question we would consult Google for. So, the type of questions I'm thinking about is the type of questions associated with being and existence. Whereas, if you ask the computer about being and existence, it can only give you what your culture has already established with regards to being and existence. Whereas, if you go to your mind and the I-Ching, it can give you something that was never perceived before. And the computer can't give you something like that. It's that spark out of... Okay, so there's two states of being and non-being. And then there's a transcendent state of nothingness, where there is no being or non-being. And it's that place of nothingness where being and non-being came from. So if you're dealing with yin and yang, you can only deal with being and non-being. Okay? Whereas being and non-being came from nothingness. And that's what the human mind actually deals with. It brings things out of nothingness and embodies them. We can make the computer look like it's doing that, but that's an artifice, right? So we call it, now we're going to call it artificial intelligence, right? Because it's an artifice. We make it look like it's drawing something out of nothingness and to embody or to create. But that's not actually true. What the computer can only do is correlate, reshape, bend what already is, not create something out of nothingness into a manifestation. Computers can't have organic life. Computers can't manifest organic life per se. It can manipulate organic life, but it can't manifest organic life. So that's subtle differences, only for those who care.
Okay, so we're drawing an answer out of nothing.
Nothing, yes.
What is the difference between, let's say, the Akashic records and where the answers from the I-Ching are coming?
No difference.
Same thing, same
right.
place.
If you want to go there, the Akashic records is going to be of another culture, which is going to be the Hindu culture, right? And the Akashic records is the same place that the I-Ching goes to, with regards to dimensionality. So what you get from the Akashic records and what you get from the I-Ching is the same. But note that the Akashic records are accessed through meditative intent, and the I-Ching is accessed through method and process. So this gives you a concrete method to access, which works time after time after time. The Akashic record, they say it works time after time after time if you're into the proper meditative modality to achieve that.
So that goes back to the very beginning when you were talking about the state of mind, that you have to have the state of thought.
Yes.
To go in and even ask the question.
In the first place, yes.
So meditation becomes top priority.
Right.
In both.
Right.
And clearing the mind or being clear of mind.
Right. And it's in the beginning days of computer programming, they used to have the analogy garbage in, garbage out. Right. So if your programming is deficient, if your programming is inconsistent, if your programming has errors in it, then your output is going to have pretty much the same type of a feel and nuance to it. It'll give you an output, but and so yes, this is the same. The quality of the input is going to depend on the quality of the output.
So that's interesting. If somebody was going to start using this, or they do use it, to go in with problems and desperation and things on that line is going to, that's garbage in. So to sit in, and if I'm going to consult the I-Ching, I meditate first. I do.
One person's garbage is another person's treasure, right? So, okay. Well, go ahead.
So I meditate first.
Right.
And I do get a clarity. Mm-hmm. I like to go into a certain state to even formulate the question. Mm-hmm. And then I actually feel an energy flow going through myself, and I use the coin toss method. Mm-hmm. And I'll feel an energy flow going through the coin toss each time. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody doesn't know, you toss
purpose.
the coins and how they come up, heads or tails.
Right.
It's
You
3
feel
coins.
a purpose. You feel an intent. You feel a
Connection.
Right.
I call it connection. And how the coins come out determines if it's a yin line or a yang line. And so you toss them 6 times, and you go from the most dense quality of earth up to the lightest quality of heaven. And then you use some form of book or something to interpret the information.
Right. And then you use classical interpretations.
Yes.
Usually based on Fuxi, 50,000 years ago type of
And what are the changing lines? What's the significance or the energy of that?
Right. That's saying that situations and circumstances are not static. They're not concrete. They're not immutable. And so when you get a situation, an initial situation from an I-Ching inquiry, what the changing lines are saying is also take this into consideration, because this can manifest into that.
Is that related to free will and how?
No,
how
it's related to infinite possibilities in space and time. Things change, and they change unexpectedly and in ways that we don't understand, because we can't fully fathom all the variables associated with a phenomena at any one point in space and time. So one of those unfathomed variables can come in and move things sideways. Things can always go sideways.
So it's saying, here's your answer. However, because of all of the variables, you need to consider this may be a possibility.
Yes. And don't say I didn't warn you.
So life purpose questions, things that people would ask, life purpose, direction, needing direction on something.
How do I get my next job? What's the best place to open my business? How should I relate with my children? What's wrong with my marriage relationship? Where do I find a pot of gold? It doesn't matter,
Health issues.
Absolutely.
I find that I like to use the type of question that says, what is the best attitude for me to take to achieve something?
The I-Ching is a useful tool for any place where knowledge is desired.
So the trigrams, the 3 yin and yang lines put together, we see those in a lot of different places in the Taoist arts. So they're in the Bagua, they're used in Feng Shui. In the Bagua, which is the 8 directions, you have that as a tool in Feng Shui, and you also have that as an embodied form in Tai Chi. And what's the relationship that you start to get into when you take the trigrams and apply them to the living space or to the body movement? Let's go living Feng Shui first.
Well, the trigrams and the Bagua in these mystic arts, the arts that are working with the energies and essences of space and time, are the same. The base trigrams of the Bagua are broken down into yin and yang complexes. So you have heaven and earth as 2 opposing complexes. You have fire and water as 2 opposing complexes. You have thunder and lake as 2 opposing complexes. You have marsh. Now marsh is an interesting energy, because marsh is like a bog, right? Marsh is like a mucus. It's like a mucousy state, and it's like something existing within a mucousy state. So in all of your images of the I-Ching, you have reflected a universal phenomenon: fire, water, heaven, earth, thunder, mountain, lake, marsh. You have these universal concepts. So for example, we have an explorer that goes to Saturn, and it observes Saturn. And the way we have to describe Saturn is we look at Saturn, we see a lake of nitrogen. Yes, but it was a lake. Right? How do we know it's a lake? Well, because we describe a lake as this type of a phenomenon, and that's what we see here. We have a lake of, right? And we go to Mars, and what do we say? We see, we have a mountain of iron oxide, right? Yeah, but it's a mountain, right? So we have these basic elemental and phenomenal concepts that we use and apply everywhere. So in Feng Shui, we have these phenomena. So a space can have this sense of being bogged down. A space can have a sense of being enlightened and heightened. A space can have a sense of being hot. A space can have a sense of being cold, flowy, obstructive, open, closed. Right? So the space can have these particular qualities and characteristics, and we use the Bagua to categorize and manage and manipulate these qualities and characteristics in space and time. Now, these qualities and characteristics can also have the same relationship to human interaction. In this case, we talk about Bagua as a martial art between human physical interaction. Right? It can be like a mountain, it can be like a water, it can be hot, it can be cold, it can be far, it can be close. And these types of yin-yang relationships are categorized by the Bagua and used to manipulate and move them around. Right? Like fire is neutralized by water. So if this person is using a fire technique, you would use a water technique to neutralize and harmonize that. Or if they're using a fire technique, you can recognize it as a fire technique and use a greater fire technique to overwhelm, to neutralize and to subdue that force. So human fighting is not a concrete action between two people. It's an energetic dance between two entities. And if you look at astral photos of one universe being subsumed by another universe, that's just the dance that you see. You see this swirl of stars coming into this swirl of stars, and they're making this, right? And they're making this formation that is just harmonious and beautiful from the distance, right? But if you were right there, it'd probably be all kinds of horrendous eruptions and destructive interactions, right? So it's just how we can look at and categorize and manipulate the dance of energy in the universe. And that happens with the space variations of the system, which is Feng Shui, and the martial variations of the system, which is Bagua Zhang, and in whatever other areas of art. It's ubiquitous in the Oriental culture. And because of that, it's ubiquitous around the world. Everybody knows, it's like we have a car, internal combustion engine, right? Which is what cars run on. So we have an internal combustion engine, which is what basically explosions and fire and this and that. But in order to make it function, we have to put water on it to cool it off and cool it down, so that we can take this energy and guide it and direct it in particular ways and do particular things to it. Because just in its raw state, it's untenable. So you have to use fire and water to balance off the forces to make a useful stream of energy. Interesting, right? But that's about as much as I know about cars.
So how about working with the Bagua? If you're learning that form, and let's say that you're working on one of the specific movements, maybe water, what happens to your body or to your experience as you're working with that movement, with that energy flow?
There becomes a qualitative change with regards to your body. It becomes how you hold your body, the tenor of your body, the muscular tone, the shape, the form, the body attitude, the emotions, the mind intent. So you adopt the qualities of the element involved.
Now, can you use that for health purposes?
Absolutely.
So if somebody has something going on physically, we would say, oh, your water element is too low.
Yes, and you can give them water movements, exercises, but you also have to give them water mind concepts, water mind intent, water, how to breathe. If you were water, how does water breathe? Is it flowy, or is it going to be choppy and rushed? Is it going to be deep? Is it going to be shallow? How does water breathe when it's flowing, right? And it's totally imaginative, because we know we can say water doesn't breathe. Yeah, you can say that, but if it did,
well, the ocean, look at the movement of it, the breath of the waves.
Exactly. But that's metaphor. Okay? That's metaphor. That's the meaning that we put on it as a human being. Yeah.
Well, isn't disease metaphor, or metaphor of the subconscious mind coming out and saying, this is what's going on, this is what's disharmonious in the body?
I think you need to keep that going. You got something there.
Okay. So somebody's leg hurts, and it's on the, they have a pain going on along the gallbladder pathway. So I would go to decision making in that and say, the metaphor that the subconscious mind is giving is, is there a decision that you're not making that's causing you pain and discomfort of some kind emotionally or in life, and it's showing up as a physical pain in the leg. It's
and
a metaphor.
Just that question itself, the pondering of that question is going to change the construct of the mind. Change the construct of the mind, you change the construct of the body. Yes. And that's how that works.
So you could use that, you could use this in the control cycle also for health.
Oh, explain the control cycle.
So you have fire and water balance each other. Somebody has too much fire going on. You could also give them water movements to help contain the fire. And then that becomes a whole moving meditation.
Yes. And the moving meditation is designed specifically for them and their disharmony. Yes.
And that's one of the things I love about it, is you can give somebody something to focus on, like focus on water, focus on the movement of water, the feel, the breath of water, and they're not focusing on the disease. Just become water. All right, let's leave it there and give people some things to just contemplate on. And I'll put some links or some pictures of I-Ching and how to get started in it, if that's something that you're interested in. It's a fascinating area to explore. So thank you, and until next time.